what if I could confirm the jump a little bit sooner? What if I could confirm the jump around here? Right? Because then I'd have this extra time. I'd have this extra time that I can add, which then, you see, helps me go through this 3-step process of interpreting, calculating, executing. Boom, 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 boom. We want to increase this. How do we increase this? Here's the trick. Well, hello, folks. Welcome to Mastery Mondays. Take a seat. Class is in session. If you don't know what this is basically my stream dedicated to a particular topic to help elevate your quality of play, and hopefully you take something away from it. And so yeah, let's get into it. You know, as usual, I tell people to sub to my channel, yada yada yada, but you know what, don't sub to my channel. How about that one? But just watch this video, go work on it. Don't even come back. Don't come back until you work on the things we talk about today. Then you can come back. Then it's a genuine sub. Then you won't be able to get enough of us. Today's topic: why your anti-airs suck. Okay, so the title, for those who are, you know, around, who've been around for years, remember my highly anticipated Fireball video, why your Fireball game sucks, and then the part 2 follow-up. So this is a series I kind of want to introduce, is the why your blank sucks series, and there's going to be a bunch of topics from footsies to spacing, pressure, defense, etc, etc. Okay, so be on the lookout for that on Mastery Mondays. Let's get on into it. Why your anti-airs suck, why they are trash, why they are absolutely poo-poo la shot. Like with anything, I like to start with the mindset first, which is essentially the foundation of all skill sets. What's important about my lessons are that you understand it in your own unique way, but then you're also able to convey it to the next person. And that way it's like trickle down bro-conomics. So let's start with mindset. Why your anti-airs suck. You don't think it's possible. So what ends up happening, let's set up a scenario. Ryu versus Cammy, for example. I think Cammy is one of the best characters to practice anti-airs against, okay? From a mindset standpoint, a lot of times people, you can train and train and train your anti-airs, but then in a real world, in a real game scenario, simulation, you end up performing them poorly. You're too late, or you just hesitate. You never really get them off in the first place. This is one type of problem people will like come across. And the reason is, when you see the jump, you just don't think it's possible. And the reason for that is one of two things. You think that because of your prior history of not anti-airing successfully, you've automatically just projected that onto the moment. You're like, wow, it's too late. And then you just don't do it. You just default to holding back, which a lot of people do. Or people will just parry. So what you have to recondition yourself to see is that that's not the case. And we're going to talk about that when we get to the other half of this lesson, okay? But for now, we're going to talk about why the mental aspects of your anti-airs suck, okay? So you don't think it's possible. So this Cammy, let's say she jumps my Fireball, okay? And I just walk back because I'm like, oh, damn, right? That hesitation. You'll see this happen a lot with newer players. You just don't think it's possible. So these are things you want to find when you go and watch your replays, because you want to like condition yourself to remove these lies that it's not possible. It is possible, and we're gonna talk about that later, okay? But that's one of the first things, right? The next reason, you're mentally spread thin, affecting your skill set through your mental stack, okay? So what happens is, less experienced players, when you're studious, you kind of tend to want to learn everything, or you tend to treat everything equally important. And that's not the case, especially when you have to factor in characters and character design. A character like Cammy, you have to be more mindful of the air to ground threat, because Cammy can quickly establish this. Whereas other characters, if you were to whiff like a low forward, all right, and she were to jump, I could still potentially anti her. So if Cammy were to do something like, it's still anti her, right? Okay. So you have to prioritize what you're looking for. If you're looking for the wrong things, characters with really strong air to ground game can like throw you off. All right, so it's very important, like at the character select, or if you're in ranked, when you see your opponent load up on the screen, you quickly give yourself a focus, parameters, boundaries of what your focus is going to revolve around. Okay, and it's not to say to be afraid of it and just sit there and just wait. No, play your game, but the idea is you want to figure out, like, against everybody, right? Because you don't have a one size fits all solution against the field. You have to curate your strategy in real time against different players when you meet them in brackets, ranked, etc. You want to figure out where in your universe of your strategy they do specific things that is unique to that player, right? And then through your analysis, through your training away from that match, which has led up to this moment, you should have already have those solutions. If you don't, guess what? Get excited, because now you have something you can lab. How can you tell? You simply go and watch your matches, and if you don't have an immediate solution pop up in your head, that means it's something worth labbing. Not everything needs to be solved. Some things can just be prevented. Don't even allow those things to happen in the first place. But that's like deeper strategy. But if you're mentally spread thin, if you're too focused on maybe like trying to check this drive rush, when she does sneak in this dive kick, you might get counter hit like that, right? Or you just, it's just too late, and then you get hit on your buffer on your DP. You're like, oh shit, right? So it's important when you watch your matches to see, like, look at your inputs, because the game is gonna tell you as close to objectively as possible. Obviously there's lag and rollback and things can get kind of skewed, but it's gonna tell you as closely as possible objectively what you did, right? So if you look at your inputs, you can see, like, at that moment what your priority was. Like, what was your intention? What were your priorities, right? Like, if you didn't do anything on reaction to the jump, you probably were so mentally checked out from the situation. If you did try to DP but you got hit, then okay, maybe you just did it too slow, right? So maybe instead of doing a perfect DP, just do a crouching DP, right? Where it's just down, down, or down forward, down forward, like this. Okay, all right, instead of trying to go for like perfect DPs which require you standing. Okay, that's something to think about. So you want to try to trim off as much fat as possible from what they're doing and just really attack the core weaknesses of their approaches. And through that simplification, it's gonna be a lot easier for you to see a jump in an anti-air. Okay, not all battles are meant to be won in a match. I understand this game can be explosive, but not every battle matters equally. Okay, if somebody goes and whiffs this, I don't have to always whiff punish this. I could simply just fireball this. It doesn't give me a lot of damage, but you know what it does? It influences, because this person is probably, the more I do this, the less likely it is that they're going to do that. Now I'm taking away options. But if I sit there all day and sit and try to react to it, I might sacrifice the quality of anti-airs that I have. Okay, so next, confirming jumps too late. All right, what does that mean? So what ends up happening with confirming jumps too late, when players jump, okay, usually what happens is players visually see them jump around this point of the jump arc. So like right around here. So now let's say I'm gonna put let's put a box, okay, and then we're gonna make dots to show the pathing. Okay, this is the pathing, or how much time between this moment to this. Okay, so when you are doing things on the ground and you're super focused, you know, your mind is looking here, okay, what ends up happening is when they jump, if you're reacting to this here, there's like a process to anti-airing, right? Number one, you have to actually interpret that they jumped, and then you have to start calculating. Okay, you have to calculate what your anti-air option is, what spacing you're at. That spacing is going to help you determine what's the most consistent tool to anti-air here, right? If she's close enough, maybe I could use a button, but if she's too far, maybe I have to use a DP. Which DP? Heavy DP. You see, so these are things that you have to calculate. Third is the actual execution of it. So you can have these first two down, but then if your execution is poor, this doesn't matter. Okay, we'll talk about that in a bit. But just to dial it back, so what you want to do to increase this window, because if you think about it, right, this right here, this timing from this point to when they can actually hit you, it's not that big. What if I could confirm the jump a little bit sooner? What if I could confirm the jump around here, right? Because then I'd have this extra time. I'd have this extra time that I can add, which then, you see, helps me go through this three-step process of interpreting, calculating, executing. Boom, 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 right? We want to increase this. How do we increase this? Here's the trick. You want to train your eye to see a couple of things. All right, so when people jump at me, the reason why I have the greatest DPs of all time It's because when somebody jumps, right, I don't see them in the air and then interpret they're there. I actually am so focused on the ground, but the funny thing is I see this, right? I see elements of this. It doesn't mean I see this exact frame because this is fast as fuck, right? Let me put this on 50% speed. You're seeing this part, okay? From that crouch, every character when they jump, they slightly crouch, then they launch forward. But then not only that, they leave like a little bit of like dust at their feet. You can kind of see it right here, okay? So if you react to this, you know they're in the air. If you react to the crouch jump looking thing, right? You're like, oh, they're in the air. And then you can now start the interpretation, which you've already cleared. Then you can start the calculation, which gives you ample time to then properly execute it, because then you're not under this pressure. You see what I'm saying? So this is one of the ways that you can increase the window of you being able to anti-air, is by doing this, right? You can train your eye to do this. So basically it's just like you're reacting to the pre-jump frames or the early tells in the jump animation. And there's a massive gap between interpreting and actually acting and executing. With this, that gap, this is a different side of this conversation where there is a hesitation. So this is where people get PTSD from previous failures. People that keep, you know, enslaving themselves to, I have bad anti-airs. What do you think is going to happen when you interpret a situation, right? It's simple conditioning. Hey, I seen that this person jumped. I'm going to calculate, but wait a minute. In the middle of my calculation and execution comes this invisible fourth element. It just kind of sneaks in between, which is your belief system. Your belief system is like, oh, but I have bad anti-airs. And guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna start fighting yourself. You're not gonna calculate properly. You're not gonna execute properly. You're having this mini conversation with yourself in the 20 frame window that you need to do all three of these things. And now you're interrupting that process. Okay? So if you keep repeating these things, then it makes sense that you're gonna behave as such and just not anti-air because you believe it, right? You're like, you're on some Naruto shit. Okay? So stop believing it and interrupt it, dispel it. It's not true. You are not your circumstance. You can define your circumstance. So yeah, you might not have strong anti-airs yet, but you're learning them. Okay, and then you can reduce that pressure that you put on yourself to behave a certain way and to follow through with bad anti-airs because you believe you have bad anti-airs. You understand what I'm saying? So now let's talk about skill set. Why you have bad skill sets? Maybe you have sluggish inputs. What does that look like? Well, let's talk about it. So when we look at DPs, right? Let's look at our inputs for DPs. If your DP were to be executed the cleanest possible way, it would look like this: forward, down, down, forward, punch. Okay, like this. Okay. And for those who have a hard time with that input, instead of seeing it like a Z, see it like a forward, let go, and pretend you're doing Hadouken. But instead of doing Hadouken, you stop the Hadouken early at the down forward. So it's forward, Hadouken, but you don't finish the Hadouken. And that's how you get perfect DPs. Because seeing it as a zigzag, I think you might put too much wrist into it, and then that kind of creates this weird variance where you might hit down back sometimes, or, you know, it just doesn't look as clean. Okay, this is how I teach people to do DPs, and just keep it as clean as possible. So the reason why if you have like really sluggish DPs, what it looks like, it will look like this. It'll look like, you know. And then imagine if this is what it looks like when you're comfortable at match start with full health. What's gonna happen when you're under pressure? You're gonna start doing this. You start doing this. There, you know. You're gonna do this by accident, right? You might do this. You understand what I'm saying? You're not gonna be able to maybe walk and block. Instead, you're gonna get level 3 by accident. So in a calm environment, you want to drill this to be as clean as possible. So that is very, very important. Okay, we're gonna talk about that when we get to the other side of this lesson. All right, another thing, you have poor spacing, which enhances the probability of unfavorable interactions. What does that look like? Okay, so basically what that looks like is putting yourself or being in ranges where these type of cross up scenarios can occur. Okay, and then your DP whiffs. So if you are not familiar, auto correcting in this game is really bad. What auto correct is inputting DP and then pressing the button on the timing of their cross up. See, it's not reliable in this game because the collision box of this character, which is like an invisible box that basically determines which side you're on, It's very wonky in this game. I think they did it deliberately to make more of a mind game out of anti-air DPs, honestly. You can't really autocorrect DPs, right? This is not reliable. So this is something that you might have a bias from older games, okay? But this is just not the right way to go about it, okay? So what you want to do is you want to cross cut instead. So what a cross cut is you intentionally cross up the opponent by walking forward, and what happens is you will turn around and be on the other side, okay? So now you force the cross up sooner, and this does a couple of things. Number one, her jump in cross up won't hit me because by the time I'm done walking, Ryu will be over here. What is, you know, his body, yeah, you know what I'm saying, right? Woo. Okay, Ryu will be over here instead, okay? And then but her hitbox will be like hitting like this. So there's like a massive divide. There's a massive range between the two of us, okay? So cross-cutting is really, really good for this type of situation. So you avoid that, but then also because you're holding forward, the first input of DP is what? It's forward, and then it's down, and then it's down forward, okay? So now the thing with cross-cutting is you're already successfully beginning this, or beginning the execution acceptance of Shoryuken because you're doing a forward input. So now all you have to do to fulfill this is do down and down forward, okay? So now the interesting thing is when the person jumps, when you what you want to do is you want to do a half circle input. So you would do down forward, right? Down, okay? And then this would switch on the other side by that point, and then now you're down back on player 2 side is actually a down forward because you switch sides, right? So then now you're gonna get a cross up DP because the game's gonna register you doing this even though you're doing it on the other side of the screen, okay? So this is how you generate consistency. So it looks like this, okay? So you look at my inputs, you can see it here. Starts right here, ends at the punch. So we got forward, down, down, back, punch. So you're doing a half circle, okay? Half circle back plus punch, okay? Using incorrect moves. So what will happen often is when a player tries to anti-air, they start using, you know, they're trying to get used to using buttons, right? But you see, there are these invisible interactions that are occurring because of hitboxes. So you think, why is that not hitting her, right? Well, what you have to do is you have to decide, is there a way for me to affect this situation so that it works? Yes, you can walk back, okay? But what if I don't want to walk back? Or what if I've committed to a button like that? Then this might not be ideal. So instead, is there something else I could possibly do? Let's find out. I don't know. Let's see if maybe back heavy kick. Nope. Okay. So I can't do jump medium punch there. Oh, jump jab seems pretty good. Okay, so why would this be good? This is good for in the corner when people want to get out, right? You want to maintain your pressure, right? But you don't want this to happen because then you whiff and then now you're in the corner. They get a big boy damage combo, right? So you want to avoid that. But look, see, even that trade, that's still fine. I'm totally fine with that. Okay, these are the type of things you want to discover. So you want to figure out what anti-air would help create a consistency in locking down the air to ground approach. Okay, so you can also use, you know, you can also use specials, of course, right? You can also get creative anti-airing with specials that otherwise you wouldn't consider to be an anti-air, right? Something like fireball at certain spacings. Okay, you can get creative with it. And lastly, you haven't trained them accurately. So your in-game performance is always a reflection of what you do and do not do in training mode, okay? So when you do go into these, you know, training mode environments and you're practicing and all that jazz, is pretty cool, right? But the thing is, you have to be very mindful that when you're playing, it's not going to be a one-player game. There's another person involved in this dance, right? So you want to recreate that as accurately as possible in training mode. But if you're not doing that and you're just doing something like this, right? Okay, that's totally fine and dandy, but are you really going to be doing this in a match? And is your opponent also going to be doing that before they jump? Are they going to do this exact little shimmy before they jump? Of course not. There's going to be variance. Some people are going to be doing this and then jumping. Are you going to be ready for that? Did you stimulate that? Or did you simulate rather the fact that you might be moving while you do it, right? Or you're moving forward, right? So you can get ready for the cross cut that you whiff. Did you simulate that? You have to simulate that, right? So it's like so important to do that. Okay, we'll talk about that. All right, so now, why are your anti-airs good? So we always want to start with what it isn't, okay? Because you want to slap yourself on the wrist whenever you violate these things, okay? Whenever you violate, you say, damn, this is not good. I'm not supposed to look like this, okay? Okay. So what does it look like when your anti-airs are good? Let's talk about the mindset. You know it's possible. You understand that when I throw this fireball, okay, the worst thing that's gonna happen, right, if I try to DP, is I'm gonna get hit anyways. See, my DP's not gonna come out, but look, so every time I throw this, you might as well, even if in the event I get hit, I'm gonna get hit anyways. Understand? If I can block, I can DP, guys. You understand? See? I could block, I could DP, so there's no reason for me to do that. All right? This is when you want to incorporate great anti-airs, okay? There's always an exception to the rule, but we don't need to talk about that because I don't want to complicate shit. But just for the sake of this, just to simplify this for now, okay? Your level 1 introduction to a punch is a punch. If you can block, you can DP. So what I suggest is to teach yourself that you can always DP. How do you do that? Even if they jump in on me, right? Even if, like, let's say like I fuck up and I block and I'm like, damn it. It's in that moment of that conflict, you can actually rewire your brain. So when you block, what I tell people is just DP anyways. Just fuck up. Who cares? If you're playing, especially if you're playing in sets and lounges, just do it. You're gonna look like an idiot. People are like, why'd you do that? So random. Like, yeah, okay, cool. It looks random, but I'm trying to drill the DP. I'm trying to drill it. I'm trying to make that association. So what ends up happening is you're closely getting to that moment of actually interpreting, like we talked about, jump, and then calculating, you see? So this is a form of calculation, is to teach yourself, yo, they jumped, I'm supposed to DP. Okay, I didn't do it there, but I'm gonna just do it after I block it, just so I can make that association as close as possible, and then you start to bridge the gap more and more, okay? And then eventually you just start, whoop. Okay, sounds good. So you're able to maintain some mental flexibility. So you can be, you know, super fixated, of course, and trying to stop this drive rush, this really strong mechanic. Okay, I get it, but you want to maintain flexibility, so in the event that your opponent pivots, you'll be ready. Okay, okay. So what helps with that is if you guys remember my KISS video, keep it simple stupid, that's on my YouTube channel also. It's finding strategies or tactics that can help you cover multiple approaches simultaneously. And this is one of the most common ones, is a quick medium buffer into the drive rush, right? And then buffering the DP when you see the jump. Okay, something like that. right? So you want to maintain flexibility, and every character is capable of doing that to some degree. You can even do that with buttons, right? Anti-air buttons. You just have to make sure you have a really strong anti-air button to do it with. It's a lot easier to do this, of course, with DPs. You're able to see the jumps earlier, like we talked about. Okay, the sooner that you can visually confirm the jump is everything that we talked about with the interpreting, the calculation, the execution. All right, you're giving yourself ample opportunity to follow through with the appropriate solution for this moment, right? Because this is like a Tetris piece or a puzzle. You're trying to solve this moment, right? So you got to look at it like that. All right, and there's very little delay between interpreting and acting, okay? And that's that belief system I was telling you guys about. All right, once you start to get a little bit of success with anything, you start to believe that you're capable of doing it. When you feel like you're inadequate at anything, the likelihood of you being able to follow through and successfully do that thing is just, it's gonna diminish. It's not real. It's not realistic, right? So you have to be able to like snipe out small victories in your training. So even if, for example, you know, even in the event you're trying to anti-air this and you keep getting hit, right? Let's say you're trying to get hit and you do that, or you get hit on the buffer. At least you tried. You understand? And then what's the next step after trying? And don't make it, hitting him. No. There has to be something before that. Okay, like you got hit on the buffer, but what if like you don't get hit on the buffer, but instead you whiff? Okay, I think that's a little better, right? Or maybe I did it too early and I whiffed like that, right? Okay, that's not bad. See, like that's a hierarchy of success, right? And we want to follow those steps, because you're not going to be able to convince yourself that you're improving if your only measurement of improving is doing the fucking thing. That doesn't make sense, right? It's like, yo, I don't think I'm improving unless I win Evo. What? That doesn't make sense. What about making it out of pools? What about beating a top player, right? Like that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. Like there's even, like, for example, people talk about MR like is like the social currency, I guess, right? But MR is like, it's okay to have a goal with an MR rank, you know what I'm saying? As long as you don't use it to define your value as a player. You could use it to measure your consistency, which is what it is pretty good at doing for the most part, but it is slightly skewed for certain reasons. But it's okay to use it to look at as a measurement of consistency, but not of value as a player. You shouldn't be looking at yourself as you're a bad player because you can't hit 1900. That doesn't make sense. You can be a good player and not hit 1900. It's just that there are flaws in your play that you probably have to improve upon. You know what I'm saying? All right. So let's talk about skill set. Why your anti-airs are good. Skill set. You have clean inputs naturally, and this accommodates for the nerves that you might experience under pressure. Under pressure. Okay, right? So when you're under pressure, it only makes sense that your execution, your reactions, whatever, those things are going to slightly suffer. So what you're doing is you're trying to have a strong enough foundation by having very, very clean, consistent inputs. So that way, let's say Cammy does jump at me, right? She jumps at me. If my inputs look like this, guys, naturally, like perfect, right? The forward, down, down, forward, like this, okay? But if I'm nervous and it looks like this, that's not that bad, right? But the problem is if it looks like this naturally, when I'm nervous, I might get this. See? So this is a way of trying to minimize the chances of you fucking up. You have sharp spacing and positioning to minimize whiffs and unfavorable interactions. So every character, it's different, so it's unique to, you know, each character. But you basically want to identify where it is that I can neutralize as many approaches as possible from the air to ground. Okay, so what that basically means is a regular jump with a button. Okay, we'll say empty jump. So the thing about empty jump is the trajectory is the same, but the thing is the hurt box doesn't expand like it does with a button, right? So because it's an empty the trajectory is the same, but you have to be a lot closer to them to hit them. Okay, so this would cover, we want to cover empty jump, but then we also maybe want to cover, for example, with Cammy, a dive kick. So you want to cover both of these things, or all three of these things. So depending on the character, you want to look at your tool set and investigate. So what I would do is, you know, you go into training mode and you have, at the same exact spacing, you do all three of these things. Empty jump. Okay, maybe a little bit further back so empty jump actually works. Yeah, I say like right here. Yep, perfect. Okay, we'll turn on all three. Now if I'm at this range, I get bodied by two of the three options. Okay, so this is not an ideal range for me to be in. Okay, if I'm using light DP, but what if I use medium? Oh, maybe if I delay. Okay, what about heavy? Okay, so at this range I could cover all three. So I don't want to be any further than this, because if I'm any further than this, like here, I'm gonna add a little too much space and I could possibly whiff. Let me go a little bit further. All right, so this is for the people that like to walk back when they're not comfortable and they're confused. I'm talking directly to you. Yes, you. Me? Yes, you. All right, so this is why you don't want to do this, just giving up space mindlessly. If you give up space, there should be a reason. All right, it's not an effective range for you to operate at, so you want to be closer. So you want to be at a range where you can cut off all three of these trajectories. Okay, see, and now I don't have to think, right? DP is just DP. There's no mind game here anymore. You understand? And then getting any closer is dangerous, because now the dive kick can hit me sooner. So if I'm here, right, I can get hit on my buffer like that. I can still DP it. I just have to be so on point. Damn, she didn't whiff. Why did she not whiff? Okay, it's gonna be a lot harder the closer you are, because the dive kick is gonna hit you sooner. Okay, so you're basically increasing that window to be able to counter it. All right, so next, we want to use the appropriate anti-air. Okay, similar to what we talked about. All right, with crouching fierce, what we'll do is we'll use a different anti-air, but that you probably don't see often as an anti-air. Okay, stand heavy kick. Okay, so this isn't a bad option to use from far away like that. Not gonna consistently get this, but if you're too far. Okay, you can also air to air. Bro, you can't DP after that? Bro, Ryu sucks. And most important, this is the final bow tie. Okay, this is what's gonna make you guys be able to do this in a game, not just in training mode. Somebody with great anti-airs can accurately simulate these scenarios from training mode, right? They can create them in training mode and then apply them in a real match. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to, when you watch replays, I'm talking about down to the most minute detail of what the movement looked like, recreate it, because there was something in the way they played, they moved, the way you moved, what you whiffed, what they whiffed, the spacing, the positioning from the corner, the meat, there was something there that threw off your ability to interpret, calculate, and execute the anti-air. So we have to figure this out. All right, so you're gonna reverse engineer this. Watching the replay is what's gonna help you do this. It's gonna be even easier to do this with replay takeover, which is why I'm so excited for this. All right, so when we talk about practicing anti-airs, okay, we don't want to make it stale where it's just something like this. Okay, this is not real. This is not, it's not ideal. Okay, this is whack. Okay, this is not gonna happen all the time in a match. Okay, what we gotta do is introduce some sazon. You know what I'm saying? We don't want to eat our chicken without any flavoring, so we gotta add some stuff. Okay, this is where having all these slots is so beneficial. So let's say I want to do a jump in, right? So categorize it. Maybe do this, right? Use these first 3 for jump. Okay, maybe use these first 3 for jump. Okay, maybe use these 2 for dive kick, right? Okay, maybe use these last 3 for feints, right? Which is just nothing, just to throw you off. Okay, maybe you could do that, or what you could do is you could use it for drive rush when you get really advanced at this, right? Okay, or what you could do is throw in maybe I don't know, a DI, right? Right? So you can categorize this, and then what's really dope is the game stores your recordings. So if you do this for every character, you'll already know, if you have a system like this, oh yeah, my first 3 recordings are always jump related, my my middle 2 are always this related, these are always these related. You see what I'm saying? So you can do this with anything, and it makes it just so much easier for you to just comb through training mode when you have a little bit of time. You only have 15 minutes, but you've already set it up. You quickly just hop in there, find an answer, you can bounce, go on with your day. So let's say, for example, we'll do one right here, right? Let's say I want to do a jump. Okay, we're gonna have her jump and then do this. Okay, and okay, that's cool. Now the next one we'll do is, I don't know, we'll do another jump like that. Okay, and then let's do a third one. What's the third one gonna look like, guys? Third one's gonna look like neutral jump, just to throw me off. See? Aha, aha, ooh, ooh, aha, aha. And once you get really good, you can just start maintaining the spacing and cover all 3. Right? All right. So you want to simulate it. Okay, simulate it to stimulate your mind. You gotta get your mind to get those same types of visual cues that throw you off in an actual game setting, and you recreate it, and through that familiarity, you're gonna reduce that time to interpret, that time to calculate, and ultimately strengthen your execution of having good anti-airs. Okay, guys, so hopefully that helped you guys go on and stop sucking at anti-airs and get good at these things. All right, we'll catch you on the next one. Love you guys. Peace.